Alright. Alright. Listen to me right now! Welcome. So I'm going to be grading all the Legend of Zelda games. Some of them came out before I was born, so obviously I'm not going to be covering every single one. I'm at least going to be mentioning every Zelda game, but some it's not really fair for me to grade them since I haven't played them, but I've played most of them, and I'm going to be going through them all chronologically by their Japanese release date, and I'm going to be grading all of them with letter grades. So don't forget to subscribe if you want, but otherwise, let's go. So the first game in the series is the original Legend of Zelda. This game came out in 1986. That was like 5 years before I was born. I've never done a full playthrough of this game, but obviously I've seen it around. I've played it a little bit, and I think I am going to grade it just because it's so well known and it's kind of the start of the entire series. I think because it's the first game, it kind of set the bar. You know, it was an open world game in 1986. Like, that's crazy. The original Legend of Zelda, I'm gonna give a flat C grade because I'm gonna say it's probably doesn't hold up to today's standards that well. I know everyone's probably gonna disagree with me with that, but that's okay. This is my list. But I'm gonna throw a C at it because it's kind of the baseline, and I'm gonna give it a very average grade for other Zelda games to be based off of that. So the original Legend of Zelda, haven't played it through all the way, but I will be giving it a C grade. The next game I'm gonna be covering is The Legend of Zelda 2. This game also came out before I was born. This is probably the game that I know the least about, probably like a lot of other Zelda fans. And for that reason, I'm not going to grade it. But I've seen some people play it. Looks cool. Looks very different. But it's clear that they didn't stay on that direction and they didn't keep going with it. So, yeah, I'm not going to grade Legend of Zelda 2. Has good music, though. Good music. So the next game is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. It's on the SNES. This game came out right around when I was born. And I actually have notes on my phone right now, and I was gonna read off of them, but this game is so like near and dear to my heart that I'm just not gonna use my notes. This game has amazing music. I don't know what happened between the NES and the SNES generation, but these songs and different tracks just became so epic and amazing. I have a video of my top 20 Zelda music tracks of all time, and a lot of A Link to the Past is in there. I have fond memories of playing this game with my dad. Obviously that doesn't really go into the grading, but it shows that it's one of my first video game memories. The jump from NES to SNES, and it doesn't look like it now, but there was a huge graphical upgrade. The Zelda formula was pretty much put into play here, where you have mini quests and heart pieces and kind of Zelda as we know it now. A Link to the Past, the dual world mechanic, obviously almost every single Zelda game does that now. Well, at least a good amount of them do that. Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword does that a little bit, and it all came from A Link to the Past. So very original game, amazing music, such a, like, going through the Lost Woods, what a mysterious place, the Dark World, like, it was so ahead of its time and amazing. The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, gets an S rating from it. It does not get any better than that. It's a perfect game. Seriously, it's a perfect game. If you haven't played it, you have to play it. It's so good. It's amazing. So the next game that I'm going to be talking about is A Link's Awakening. This came out on the Game Boy back in the day, 1993. This game I kind of view very similarly to the original Legend of Zelda. It kind of put the blueprint for what we now know as 2D Zeldas. They were all 2D back then. But now 2D Zeldas really take the blueprint of Link's Awakening, so it kind of started that little subgenre of Zelda games. I'm not going to spoil anything, but the story is really cool, and I think it's ahead of its time. Obviously it got a remake on the Switch, which is cool. But because it's kind of like a baseline for handheld Zeldas now, I'm also going to be giving Link's Awakening a C average grade to base other handheld games off of. So Link's Awakening, C. I'm good with that. I feel good about that. So next is the big daddy, big boy. It's Ocarina of Time. Everybody knows about this game. It's one of the best games ever made, and everybody knows it. I don't really need to talk it up, but I'm gonna do it anyway. The jump from 2D to 3D, Nintendo just like they knew what they were gonna do, and they executed it so well with Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time. It was both these revolutionary 3D movements, and they executed it almost to perfection, where these games almost hold up well today. A lot of people really love Super Mario 64, and a lot of people really love Ocarina of Time. Again, the music, just felt like they got struck with inspiration. The story is amazing. It's kind of dark, kind of scary. My favorite Zelda song of all time is in this game. It's the Forest Temple theme, and just the creepiness and the Zelda games are Nintendo games, obviously, and they're mainly for children and young people, but Zelda has this undertone of scary, evil. You know, they really tread that line carefully, and Ocarina of Time really did that. It's a very long game, a lot of content here. Obviously, you kind of have the dual world mechanic with growing older, and the world is, you know, messed up because Ganon took over everything. The dungeons are really good. You know, it was this first attempt at 3D dungeons and the Zelda formula into 3D, and they executed it so well. I know I've said that a few times, but it's true. They nailed it. They just nailed it. The music, the story, the characters, the pacing of the game, all the side quests and all the secrets you can find. It felt like back in the day on the N64, it felt like Breath of the Wild. Now when you play Breath of the Wild, you're like, how am I ever going to explore this game? That's really how Ocarina of Time felt back in the day for old people like me. So Ocarina of Time, this game also gets an S rating. This is a perfect game. If you haven't played Ocarina of Time, it might not hold up too well. It's kind of a choppy frame rate and stuff. A lot of people care a lot about that. But you can play the 3DS remaster, and they did a really good job with that. It's very true to it, but it feels like it's updated for a newer Nintendo console. But if you don't have an N64, you can emulate it. You have to play this game. It's perfect. Just play it. It's an S. Come on, I gave it an S. What are you gonna do? It's great. Play it. Thanks. Bye. Alright, so the next game is Majora's Mask, and I'm a huge Legend of Zelda fan, and this probably ruins all my credibility, but I haven't played this game yet. I haven't played Majora's Mask. I really want to. The remaster came out on the 3DS, and I just didn't have time to do it, and back in the day I never played it, and you know, there's just so many games now, it's hard to play it. I will play Majora's Mask someday, but obviously, I know a lot about it, but I cannot grade it because I have never played it. So Majora's Mask, hope to play it someday. I know it's very beloved by fans, but no grade for me because I am a degenerate and I've never played it. So I'm sorry. So after, you know, a big break of, you know, there's a few 3D games, they kind of went back to, I think a different person created this game other than Nintendo. They kind of licensed Zelda out to another company. Forgive me, I forget which one. But the Oracle games came out in 2001 for the Game Boy Color, I believe. And these games were awesome. I really, really like these games. I'm lumping them together because they're meant to be lumped together. They're meant to be kind of one thing. There's Oracles of Ages and Oracles of Seasons. I mainly played Seasons, but I did play Ages as well. And it kind of built off that Link's Awakening kind of vibe, like I mentioned earlier. With Seasons, you manipulated the seasons, and the whole world changed depending on what season you made it. So you can make it winter, and then snow is built up so you can get to new areas. Summer, snow would melt, and you could go here, blah, 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 blah. And then Ages, you manipulate time, obviously. There was a password system that linked these two games together, and so you could access extra content and stuff. So that's pretty cool. But I'm going to give these games a B. I'm going to lump them together, and they're going to get a B grade, a nice solid B grade, because I really, really love these games. They're really good. I enjoyed them, and yeah, you should play them. They're really good. I support. B grade. And then you have Legend of Zelda 4 Swords. I vaguely remember this game coming out. I never picked it up. I never played it. But I think I remember some of my friends being disappointed in it. I haven't really looked into it since then, and I don't think I will. But nonetheless, I cannot rate this game, so we will move on. All right, moving on to The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. This game is almost perfect. It is so close to being perfect. It's such a good, solid game. I regularly play this game because, again, the music, the vibe of the game, the story is really unique. It's a Hyrule that has been flooded, and so the whole world is an ocean, and there's islands dotted around, and you sail to each island. It's a very, very unique idea, and it's very well executed too. The progression feels good. The only thing about this game is near the end of the game, there's like a really annoying fetch quest that completely slows everything down. It takes the epicness out of it, and it's a really dumb way to acquire an important item in the Zelda franchise. I won't spoil what it is if you haven't played it, but the Wind Waker, it's the first Zelda game I ever personally owned, so I'm pretty proud of that. And yeah, Wind Waker, I'm going to give it an A+. It's almost an S. It's so close. But because of that annoying fetch quest, you can't make it a perfect game, because it's not. So A+, Wind Waker, GameCube, 2002 or something like that. I love it. It's a great game. Love it. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the Game Boy Advance. In like 2004, a game came out called The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. I really enjoy this game. I thought it was really good. I can't really remember any of the music or anything like that. I'm sure it's good. I just can't remember it. I don't really listen to any of the music still, like other previous Zelda games. The premise of the game is you can shrink down really small, and so it's kind of, again, has that dual world mechanic that Link to the Past started, where you shrink down and you go inside these bookshelves or these little cities where these Minish people live. You go up into rafters of buildings and stuff, and there's a lot of really cool camera work. It's a really solid game, very clever dungeons. So I'm gonna give it a B-. I'm comfortable with that grade. Minish Cap, B-. You already know what it is. Let's go. Cats, please stop fighting. I'm trying to record a video. The next game is Twilight Princess, and this game was at the end of the GameCube, at the beginning of the Wii era of Zelda games. And this game is really, really solid. I would say it's right up there with Wind Waker. It's Nintendo's first attempt at like a dark-themed Zelda game, literally, like it's very dark. The other character, I don't want to give any spoilers, but the other character with you is cute, like the character that accompanies you on your adventure is really cute, mischievous, kind of evil, really taunty. It's a very, very, very clever character. It's a very beloved character of the franchise. The music is really, really solid. It's tough to beat Twilight Princess music because, again, it's very dark. Like, some of it can be legitimately sad, like very sad. The beginning of the game is ridiculously tutorialized. It takes forever to get into the game, and that's really frustrating. Whenever I play through it again, I'm excited. I'm like, let's play Twilight Princess. But when you start to play the game, you take like 2 hours to get into anything, real. I wish they would just cut out that whole beginning part of that game. I don't like it. So that's going to kind of dock it a little bit. I would say between Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, I gave Wind Waker an A-, I believe. I'm just going to have to give... Man, this is tough. I think that Twilight Princess is not as good of a game as Wind Waker. So I'm going to have to give Twilight Princess a B+. And that hurts my soul because Twilight Princess deserves better than a B+. But if I have to differentiate Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, and I'm going to do that by putting Wind Waker at A-. Twilight Princess a B+, and it's mainly because of that beginning tutorial section. It's not good. But other than that, Twilight Princess is a really, really good game. I feel like Twilight Princess is the first Zelda game that's really similar to Ocarina of Time, where it's like, obviously a Nintendo game, it's a Zelda game, but it's kind of dark and it's kind of scary all the way through. There's a dungeon, it's called City in the Sky, and it's all bright and happy and exciting. But it's probably the scariest Zelda dungeon I've ever played, just because it's just ominous and weird. It just feels deserted. It just feels empty, and there's tension and suspense. So that's creepy. There's also like one of my favorite dungeons of all time it's called Snow Peak Ruins, and it's like a mansion or like a battlement, it's a fortress on top of a mountain, and it's like run down and dilapidated. It's really cool. So, but yeah, Twilight Princess, B+. B+, really? Am I gonna do that? Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Full send. It's done. So next I'm going to talk about Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass on the DS. I've never played these games. I completely missed the DS era of games. I'm not really in any rush to play these games. I've heard that it just feels like they're filler from what I've seen. Just filler and not really true to like how epic Zelda games can be. I'm in much more of a rush to play like Majora's Mask, for example. So it's probably going to be a long time before I can play Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. But regardless, I can't rate the games. So moving on. Next. The next game I'm going to talk about is Skyward Sword. It came out on the Wii. And Skyward Sword is like so close to being a good Zelda game, but it's not a good Zelda game. It is like the definition of Nintendo missing the point of a game. Like Nintendo is either on point and they just deliver exactly what you want, or they completely miss it and it's just a failure. And Skyward Sword is a failure, at least in my opinion. The motion controls, very frustrating, completely forced. I wrote my notes before Skyward Sword HD was announced. And in Skyward Sword HD, you're not required to do the motion controls, which I think is a really good move by them. I think they kind of saw like, hey, yeah, this didn't work. And, you know, I think there's a reason why the next mainline Zelda game was Breath of the Wild. They completely knocked the whole formula on its head. And I think they saw with Skyward Sword, they're like, yeah, we can't just keep doing this, because it didn't work. It was so slow, and there were some really good parts of the game, but you have to fight the same boss like 3 times. Which isn't that bad, but I guess in the general scheme of things, like every time I fought that boss, I was like, oh shit, this guy again. Like, oh, okay, here we go. And it's just, it's not necessary. They could have had you do anything else other than fight him 2 more times. Plus the motion controls, it just kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. I don't think there's anything extraordinary about the dungeons or the music or anything like that. I could be wrong. Maybe I was just losing my love for the franchise. Which I don't think that's what it is, because I really like Zelda. But yeah, I have a sour taste of Skyward Sword in my mouth, and I'm gonna give it a D+. That's a pretty low grade, I know, but I view Skyward Sword as one of the weakest Zelda games, and hopefully Skyward Sword HD will. Honestly, I'm not gonna buy Skyward Sword HD, so it's probably gonna stay there. But anyway. It's still a really good, solid game. I would recommend you play it. It's worth a playthrough, but if you compare it to other Zelda games, no contest. It's a D+. So, yeah. Next is The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. So this game is a sequel to a game that I gave an S earlier in the video, Link to the Past. They actually made a sequel to this game, and it's on the 3DS. And this game had huge shoes to fill. I don't think there's any way they were ever going to live up to the first game. A couple of things that were cool, like you get to turn into a painting, and there's some really, really cool game mechanics with getting over, cliffs and going around structures and stuff. And I thought that was really good game design. But there's some really rough stuff that, they, instead of progressing through the game and acquiring items, you rented them out, you bought them. And then when you died, you lost your right to that item and you'd have to buy it again. I guess it was them trying to mix up the formula, but it just didn't feel like Zelda to me. It just felt like a different game. And when it's A Link to the Past, like, you can't mess with that. Like, that's sacred. A lot of the music was redone. Music was really good. Painting mechanics were good, but it just had such big shoes to fill, and it made the wrong moves to try and up the sequel. It kind of downgraded it. If you had to pick between A Link to the Past, a really old game, or this A Link Between Worlds, one of the newer Zelda games, I would pick A Link to the Past. I don't think you're missing out on anything going to the older game in this situation, which is a shame. I'm gonna give A Link Between Worlds a D. So I think it's better than Skyward Sword, and I think they did a lot right. Again, it's worth a playthrough, but compared to a lot of these games, it's not as good. So it gets a D, and it sucks because I enjoyed the game. I loved it, but D. Zelda games are too good. The competition is tight. It's too good. Zelda Triforce Heroes exists. When the trailers and stuff came out for this game, I didn't really like what I was seeing. I never played it. I don't know if I will play it. Like I said earlier, I'd much more rather play Majora's Mask. So I don't know if this is ever going to get a playthrough from me. So I cannot rate this game. Alright, so this leads us to the final, or not the final, but the most recent mainline Zelda game, Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild completely threw everything Zelda on its head. They trashed item progression, they trashed Zelda dungeons, they trashed just like the linear way you go through a Zelda game, and it paid off immensely. I think everyone agrees with that. Breath of the Wild is like a renaissance for Zelda. It was kind of scary when we were seeing stuff about it, but as soon as you start playing that game, you know you're in good hands, and you feel that sense of wonderment. Is wonderment a word? I don't know. You feel that sense of wonder where it's this huge world and you can't wait to just explore every nook and cranny. A lot of the gameplay systems are a little light. Like, you can tell that the main goal of this game is to throw you into a huge world. So there's some light, systems that are kind of meh. But for a Zelda game that throws everything out the window, they did such a good job. Another situation where something changed and they're doing this new thing and they executed it so well, like Nintendo sometimes does, and they did it here. Breath of the Wild gets an S because I think it's a perfect game. It's really good. Everything from, I liked the shrines, I liked the divine beasts, I liked the DLC, I liked the story, I just love you start the game and you just don't know anything. You don't know anything. There's no tutorialization. You guys know I don't like that based on previous grades that I've given Zelda games. And you just go out and you see this huge landscape and you can just go wherever you want. And that's really cool. And they did it well. And it's a perfect game. So that game gets an S. It's another Zelda game that gets an S. Argue with me. I dare you. You can't. I'm right. So as I await Breath of the Wild 2 and any other Zelda games, I didn't put Link's Awakening Remake on here just because it's literally the same game, just a different graphical style, so I didn't put it on here. So I'm going to view Breath of the Wild as kind of the most recent game. As I wait for Breath of the Wild 2, I wanted to make this video because I just think it's fascinating that my favorite Zelda games are all from different eras, completely. So I really like A Link to the Past, old school. I really like Ocarina of Time, like a lot of other people. But it's like kind of middle old school. And then I really, really like Breath of the Wild. And these are all games that Nintendo saw a trend of what their games were doing, and they decided, let's be creative, let's do something different, and let's execute it. And all of these games succeeded in that. They did it so well. The people that made these games are so talented. They're so amazing. I'm excited for Breath of the Wild 2. And yeah, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. If you disagree with any of these grades, let me know. but I'm pretty confident in them. Yeah, thank you.
Yo.